Listening audience, my guest this morning, as I told you, she called in right on time. And my guest this morning is Shonique Bibby. Shonique Bibby is on a mission to share this knowledge and educate those who do not have financial literacy knowledge and those people who have made mistakes and are seeking education to elevate themselves financially. Shonique currently is a CPA and has worked over 9 years in the auditing profession. She recently added author to her profile when she wrote and published her first book, Money, Financial Literacy, and You, which covers key financial literacy foundational concepts. Now, those of you who have been listening, you know a few weeks ago I went to the Harlem Book Fair. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to meet many authors and many people. But Shonique stands out because I was walking around the fair and I had these books in my hands and a couple other things I had purchased, and I didn't have a bag. And so she walks to me and she says, "Do you need a bag? You look like you need a bag." And I said, "Yeah, actually I do." So she walked me back over to her booth and we exchanged cards and information. And so she is joining me this morning. So welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Ms. Shonique Bibby. Shonique, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I am thrilled that you joined me this morning. Again, you're the second or third person from the book fair that's actually appeared on the show since we met, that particular Saturday whenever we were over there at the fair. So I am always thrilled. That was my reason for going. I wanted to go over there and meet authors to get them booked and scheduled to be on the show. So I'm glad you took me up on my invitation. And I am really looking forward to speaking with you about your topic, specifically about your topic, because it is so critical in terms of financial literacy. The one thing that we do and use the most, which for the most part is money, is what we kind of teach about the least. Now, when I'm not on the air, my day job is principal of a school. I know we've been over the last recently been trying to work financial literacy into the curriculum, or actually has been introducing the curriculum. But that's something that ought to have been taught. I mean, that should be something like from almost kindergarten about what money is all about and saving and so forth and so on. So let's kind of roll the tape back in terms of how did you become interested in financial literacy? Because I know when we were talking, you said you started saving as a child. So let's talk a little bit about that, how that got started, and then how it turned into your interest in financial literacy.
Sure. Thank you so much. So if I'm going back to the beginning stages, I grew up in Barbados. And when I was a child, I remember my grandmother taking me to the bank. We opened a bank account so that she would be able to help me begin saving. My mother was in the U.S., so anytime she would send money back, my grandmother would make sure that I have something put aside for myself for the future. So that's one of the ways where I started to just start understanding that what is a bank, what is the use for a bank. Okay, you can put money here to save it for later. And that was one of my first steps there. Growing up later, when I had my first job, or let me just rewind further, as I became older and I was a teenager, and they would have different events. And sometimes I would want the clothes that I wanted. So if my mom sent me $20, and I would start saving over the next couple of months so that I can get the outfit that I wanted. So that's where I started to learn the principle of if you want something later, you have to save for it today and you have to wait and accumulate. So I started understanding, okay, this is another way. And then it just kept snowballing into different areas where later as well, I started to have my first job. So I would budget for things because now you have a cell phone bill. And so my relationship with money was always understanding that it holds value because I could hold it for later to get something in the future. I should be saving for it. And then as I started budgeting, I started having more conversations with my friends, and I would help them build their budget. And I would realize that a lot of people didn't know what they were spending their money on. They were just spending their money. It wasn't really much thought given to it. And that was, in my opinion, going to cause you heartburn a little bit later, because eventually you would get into credit, not understand credit, and you would start spending more than what you were making. So that's how I got into building budgets for people. And fast forward today, I wanted to, help others on a wider scale. But I do agree with you. It is early to start planting. It is important to start planting seeds very early in the youth mind about how to manage money. And you don't start all at once. I believe you start with little examples and little principles so that they can keep building on it for, a better future. So.
No, you're absolutely right. Matter of fact, I'm impressed because it's rare that you get, somebody young, a child that would take on that mindset of, well, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to save for it. Because most of the time, especially in the way we are in 2024, we really are in this microwave society wherein I want it and I want it now. So the patience that comes along with saving for it, because it's real easy to put it on a credit card. And it's real easy to, like you said, go into debt. But to say, okay, I want this and I'm going to save for it, that's a totally different mindset. And again, financial literacy, it is a language. People don't really understand that it is a language and it is something that we need to learn. And like I said, as I was introducing you, that is not something that we teach in school. And it ought to be a subject, just like you have math, just like you have language arts, just like financial literacy ought to be a subject. Now, like I said, over the last couple of years, we have introduced it into our curriculum and they've kind of mandated that you will teach financial literacy, but we're still not where it will get to, I hope, and where it ought to, because I know as a child, the closest thing I got to financial is we did have a banking program, kind of like what you were describing, like what you did, but we actually had like a program in school where we had a bank book and we could bring $1 a week or $2 a week, or what have you, to build our accounts. But we have so many people who are financially illiterate and financially in trouble. So as you're now saying, like, do you realize what you're spending your money on? Because people get paid and they live paycheck to paycheck and they don't put anything away and just buy, just spend. So like you said, talk a little bit about, that exercise of what we call a budget. Well, that's the first thing. Let's describe, define budget and the process.
Sure. So thank you for that question, because within the book, that's the first topic, because everything to me is built on a budget. So a budget is basically you're coming up with a plan of the way that you're going to spend and the way that you're going to save your money, and you're going to allocate that to different buckets. I personally love the financial, the 3 buckets where you look at your needs, your wants, and your goals. So if I would say in plain language, how would I create a budget? Your first step would be to understand what is the amount of money coming in. So make sure you put that aside. What is the amount of money that you're expecting to spend? And you would start to have a hard conversation with yourself. There are certain things that you need in life. You need utilities, right? You need somewhere to live. You need food. Those are some things that you need. There are things that you want that makes you happy, but sometimes we focus on those things and we don't save enough for our needs. So also understand that you should be rewarded in your life because you want to be happy as well. So you might want to go to a restaurant, or you might want to go to a concert or a movie, and understanding that this is not the focus when you're beginning your financial journey is to make sure you're satisfying all of your wants. Your first focus is to make sure that you're aligning with what do I need to survive as a human in America, and then allocate, okay, this is what I'm going to want as well. And think about the future, okay? So when you're thinking about the future, what is going to happen 10 years, 15 years from now? I may need additional money because I want to buy a house or I want to buy a car. Think even further in the future. If you're just starting out, you may want to have a retirement savings. So what do you need to allocate? Maybe you can only save $100 every month to put towards your investment retirement account, right? That's your IRA. Maybe you might also want to put a little bit aside because you want to get a car as well. And we all know that new and used cars have skyrocketed. So when you're thinking about a budget, the steps are understand how much money approximately that is coming in. If you are someone who don't have a stable budget because it varies, calculate the average of the amount of money that you're getting over the last 2 or 3 months to get an idea. And that will be your starting point. This is how much is coming in. This is how much will be going out towards my needs. How much is left over from my wants? How much is left over from my financial goals? And every time you make a purchase, you can either find an app. I'm an Excel girly, so I have a spreadsheet. It is within my book. I email it to people if they ask me, where I give you a starting point of this is how much your budget is going to be. You're going to have a column for how much it actually is, and then you're going to take the difference. So if you thought that your rent was going to be, well, your rent never changes, but if your rent or your mortgage is going to be $1,500, and when it occurs, it's going to be $1,500, the difference is zero. But sometimes you might think your food might be $600, and maybe it's $700. So then you'll be in the red, but you'll do that calculation. So for the next month, you can look at your previous month and say, okay, it was a little bit high. Can I change anything so that I'm not spending more than what I wanted? So maybe instead of getting a bunch of different meats, maybe you swap that for some beans and legumes. And I know because I've done that when I was saving, where I reduced that and I swapped. So you still get your nutritional value, but you also get to stay under budget and not have to worry that you're spending more than what you're making. So I hope that this is useful. I hope I answered your question, Mark.
No, actually, you did. Matter of fact, we're going to continue on that vein. Matter of fact, the title of Shonique's book is Money, Financial Literacy, and You. Read this if you want to conquer finances. And the author of the book is Shonique Bibby. Now, the reason this is so important, and the thing about money is the earlier and faster you start doing it, like she just said, thinking about the future, the better off your future will be. Matter of fact, had I done at 17, 18, 19, I could retire and I'd be a billionaire, probably a millionaire, maybe not a billionaire, but because my goal has always been to be a millionaire. I've probably already been that and then some based on the money that I've earned over the years, but just probably not invested it wisely or done things with it wisely. Because had I done some things wiser whenever I was in my teens and early 20s, I wouldn't have to work now. So like you start talking, I mean, I remember years ago, there was this company, they've changed their name now, but it used to be called A.L. Williams. And their tagline was buy term and invest the difference. And they started talking about compound interest and so forth and so on. What is it about finance? Because there are certain things that people just are fearful of when they hear it. One word is data. Whenever we hear data, people get fearful of it. And finances is another one for many people, not all. For those who love math and finance, is a breeze. But for those who don't have that inkling or that ilk, they're literally fearful of it. Talk to us a little bit about how do you get over the fear of dealing with money and investments in the stock market and IRAs, as you said, so forth and so on.
So before I answer your question, you said something that is very important, right? That you said you maybe touched $1 million previously, but you didn't invest it. And one thing that I always tell people when we speak, and I've learned it, I can't remember where I heard it, but as you are making more money, I stress to people, do not immediately change your lifestyle. So if you get that raise and you get a new job and you're increased maybe like 20%, don't go and buy a new car immediately, right? Don't start buying that grass-fed steak immediately. You're supposed to live within your means, and then you figure out what is important to you. So just answering your question, I think the most fearful thing about finances that people have is that they just don't know. And it also stems from being embarrassed because they know that they should, but it's embarrassing to tell someone, I don't know how to budget. I have this credit card and I'm racking up the debt, but I don't even know what makes up my credit score. I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck and I don't want to talk to anyone because I'm going to feel smaller, right? And so the one thing people have to understand is you're not alone. You are making some mistakes. I have made the mistakes as well. I've racked up a lot of debt over the years of having credit cards, but understanding that you're not alone, understanding that everyone who is working or receiving some type of assistance is receiving money and they're spending money and they have to live somewhere and they have to buy stuff. So the first step in just getting over your fear for finances is to understand that you are not alone and there's no reason for you to be embarrassed because we're all in this world together. And chances are the same person that you are talking to may have made similar mistakes to what you have made. So you just have to understand, like, the information is out there. Don't be embarrassed. And the longer that you wait is the longer that you're impacting your life and your family's life, because once you know, you'll tell them, they'll learn, and it'll start skyrocketing from generation to generation. So I would say the first step, don't be scared, and find a network that you can talk to, or people that you can ask questions who seem to know a little bit more about finances than you do.
Going back to what I was saying in terms of, because there was a time when I was working for a company and we would get a bonus, and it would be like, they called it a team award. And the team award, you would get this bonus, and it was on top of your salary. Now, the trick to this, as you were just saying, the trick would be to take the bonus and pretend like you didn't have it and invest it somewhere. Because what happens, like, is people will get the bonus and they go out and go spend buck wild. Now, I didn't do that. It was always put on something like on the house or something like that. But there are times I would, like, when I look back reflectively, when I reflect, it was like, wow, if I could have just, each year for those few years that we got those bonus, if I could have just socked that bonus away, just like I didn't get it, and just let it ride. Because this is the thing about interest. You can, especially the larger amount that you save, the more, because interest now, you're talking, but even that adds up when it starts compounding. A lot of people don't understand the terminology and difference in literacy. When you start talking compound interest, when you start talking, amortization, when you start talking, depreciation, when you start talking savings, and you start talking retirement accounts and college funds and so forth and so on. A lot of people, like you said, just don't understand the language.
Yeah. So people need to, there are financial advisors that exist, and I've been to conferences where we've had financial advisors talk about, investing your money with them and, different banks, and even having a conversation with my own financial advisor. And there was something missing. The missing portion was people didn't understand how much money they had. They had no preliminary information. And that's where I think that the gap was to get to, okay, I want to invest my money, I want to save it. But before you do, you have to go and find that information. And that's where that's why I wanted to write a book, because this is the 101 basics. The audience can stem from 18 plus or younger, but you have to have the preliminary understanding of, if I'm 18, I just turned 18, I want to open a bank account. What do I even need? What is interest? So I touch on those things because you need the preliminary information. You can find it with a quick Google search, but you also need to see if you can get into the rooms or conferences and just Google personal finance events near me so that you can start, learning the basics, because you need to walk before you run. And when you have that information, you'll be able to, learn more and then be comfortable with investing money in the bank, because you understand that this compound interest, every day that you have your money saved is every day that it's growing. And like you mentioned, nowadays, some banks are giving more interest than they've ever done before. I've seen 4%, 4.5%, 5%. And usually that will be associated with like a certificate of deposit, a CD. But now the banks are saying, okay, we want to compete with the stock market because that's where you're putting your money. Bring your money to us now. And if you understand that when you use a compounding interest with a high interest rate, your money is going to multiply with you not doing anything except for being consistent and depositing the money every month.
So for those of you who are listening, if you have children or grandchildren, the quicker you can get them on board with understanding. Because even as Shonique said earlier, if let's just say for you're 18, 19, whatever, and you put $100, now 100 is a small amount, but if you're, and I'm not knocking working at McDonald's and saying that's not what I'm doing. I'm not throwing shade on working at McDonald's. But if you do get in the habit, if you're working a minimum wage job, whatever, to set aside something, If you get $100 a month, if you multiply that by 12, that's $1,200 a year that now starts gaining interest. And you do that over a few year period of time. And then you get a better job. And now you kick that up from 100 to 200 or 100 to 150. And then you just continue. The more, again, as she said, the more you begin to make, you adjust your savings along with that. It is interesting to me how quickly, because a lot of times what we think is, I don't make enough to save. But it is interesting how quickly it does add up once you start doing it on a consistent basis.
Yes, that is true. That is something that people, once you understand that, you'll be quicker to save. And you're 18 now. What happens when you're 45 and you've been consistently saving? You have a lot more money, and a lot of that will be interest that have just worked for you while you're out doing other things. So that's one of the benefits as well.
No, and you just said something right there. Your money work, because see, that would be the ultimate goal. And that's where, and again, I don't think there's a whole lot of understanding on that. It is, don't you do all the work, make your money, have your money do the work. People don't realize that your money can wind up working for you because, and again, this is going back to it growing and the interest and so forth and so on, that yes, you can work hard, you can work smart, but once you start putting money aside, your money now begins to work for you also.
Yeah, that is a great benefit. Everyone is asking about or talking about passive income. And income isn't really passive because you have to, most of the time, maintain if you're going to do real estate or something like that. But with the compounded interest, it's literally working as you just deposit the money and it's multiplying and the bank is, giving you that interest. So,
and they have different, for lack of a better term, gimmicks, but there are different incentives rather, that like you'll start off with maybe the first day of the month saving a penny. The second day of the month, saving 2 pennies. The third day of the month. I mean, it just keeps snowballing until by the end of the month, you've saved a certain amount. And if you do that every month, back to what we were saying, you'll have a pretty good amount by the end of the year. And interesting that you just mentioned passive income, because that's where my next question was getting ready to go. Let's talk a little bit about that. Passive income, and what is that? What is the definition of that?
So passive income, to put it into easy terms, is when you have money that you, it stems from some type of investment that you've made, and you're not working a 9 to 5 to achieve returns from the money. So some examples could be real estate. You bought a multifamily home, and now you're receiving rent. So passive income is money that is derived from other activities where you're not required to put maximum effort compared to a regular job. It's the easiest way that I would define it.
No, that's absolutely right. You're getting, that's a very good example. Like if you buy, of course you have the home you live in, then you can have what we call investment properties. That's where you rent it out to other people. Of course, the hope is always that the rent you receive is more than the expenses you have to put out for the house. Because this is the other thing. Like you said it earlier when we were talking, when you started, about you have to understand your income and your outgo. In other words, your expenses and your income. And those, you always have to be monitoring those. Am I spending more than I'm bringing in? Or am I bringing in more than I'm spending? And am I not only doing that, but I am also setting some aside?
Right. Yep. That's important. And so you can Google different passive income ideas and see which one works for you and really try to understand, because sometimes your passive income could become a job.
Right.
And that is not the goal of passive income. Is that the majority of the effort or the return that you're making is derived from energy that you are not directly having to apply to that activity, but you're still receiving some type of investment as well. I know some people talk about the stocks. Some people talk about also vending machines. That was something I was looking into when I was trying to figure out what is passive income. So there are many ideas out there. You just have to Google what are examples of passive income in 2024, or the best passive incomes in 2024 to help you make money. Yes.
Now, can anybody, I'm asking a question, it's rhetorical in a sense, but Can anybody understand? And I know you said you started from ground zero with your book, but you have some people that have more of an inclination to math than others. But we all deal with money. We all have to deal with that. And there are more people who tend to get in trouble with money than those who are like savvy like you. No, that's what I'm going. How do we get everybody on the playing field to understand what to do and how to handle their money?
So I think you just have to be sick and tired. Well, for me personally, and many people can maybe attest to this, you just have to be sick and tired of being stressed out about your money situation. Personally, I know for myself, it was debt. For many years, I was happy racking up my debt and paying it off and racking it up and paying it off and paying, I thought something might have been wrong with paying $100 in interest to the bank and interest fees and maybe $20 towards my principal. And I would talk to other people and say, no, that's normal. So you have to just get tired of that situation is one way to get started, and then start to reach out to others. Maybe find a inspiring, YouTube or Facebook about how do I live a better financial life? How do I get started with personal finance? But for me, I was tired of debt. I knew that there had to be a better way. And then I started to see, okay, what are some people's lifestyles that I'm inspired by? So I'm not going to talk about a celebrity because many of us are not celebrities, but who is that everyday person that just seems to know what they're doing? You may have I had a confident example, have great examples in some of my managers, or I'm a CPA, so I would go to NAB and I would meet people there and I would network, or even different organizations at work, and we would have conversations, and I would ask them, okay, so how do you, budget, or what are some examples of things you can spend your money on? I mean, I met my financial advisor through a reference from work because this was someone who were many levels above me. And I said, well, I don't know what I should do. What are my next steps? Do you have recommendations? So I always encourage people to just talk to other people who for sure is making, better financial decisions than you, and also research and network. So that would be my advice.
For those of you, I hope you've been with me since 6, but I definitely hope you've been with me since 7. My guest this morning is Shonique Bibby. She is the CEO of Flourish with Bibby, LLC, and we're talking finances. Now, there was something you said a minute ago that triggered my next question, because this is kind of how I operate. I told you it's very conversational. My questions actually are derived from responses. You talked about interest. We were talking about interest, and you said interest on it because there's two types of interest, folks. There's the interest you earn on your money, but there's also the interest you pay whenever your money is on a credit card or what have you. And the two are nowhere close to each other. You're talking like whenever you now use somebody else's money, like a credit card or a bank, whatever, they will charge you 29-30% versus whenever they're using your money in the bank, and you're talking about 4, 5, 6%. There's a big gap. When you start talking, $4,000 or $5,000 at 29 or 30% a year, you're paying the bank or the credit card owner a whole lot of money to be using their money. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, in terms of, and while you're talking about that, paying down your debt, because we also need to understand, if you have a $5,000 credit card bill and you pay in a minimum payment, you're never going to pay that off.
Yes. Let's talk about it. My first encounter was when I learned a little bit about credit in an economics class, and understood, okay, it's important. We were aligned that, you should start building your credit. So I started when I was in college. I didn't have the experience of banks coming to my school and saying, hey, you're accepted. So I started to go to banks and I would get, denied until someone finally gave me a chance. All students would go to this particular establishment and they would give students credit cards. And so I started, really good, just paying off, buying a shirt, then paying it off, right? It was a retail credit card. And then fast forward to opening an actual credit card with a bank directly. And so I had it there. And I did what many adults sometimes do, where I had an emergency occur and I did not have an emergency fund. I did not have the money set aside for accounts. I had to go to a funeral in Barbados and I needed money for the flight and I needed it now. And another instance was I was just short $1,000 for textbooks and I couldn't get that loan. So I put it on my credit card. And that was the beginning of me racking up debt. And many people can have different scenarios, but it stems from them really just having an emergency. And they're like, I'm going to pay it off. So you put it on your credit card and then you go back to life after the emergency and you forget about it and you start paying the minimum on your credit card because that's what you can afford, or you think, okay, this is the minimum per the credit card that you can do. So that's all that you do. And that's where you start to pay. That's when the banks start to love you even more because you start incurring that interest and you're paying it. And like you mentioned, you could be paying anywhere from 16 to 29% on the bank's money. So that $1,000 emergency has now turned into close to $1,500 and it keeps skyrocketing. So with debt, I would say you have to start understanding how much debt you have. You have to lay it all out on the table. And then you have to see, okay, according to my budget, because you need a budget, everyone needs a budget. You'll see how much can I afford to pay on this debt? And then you're going to choose the strategy that best works for you. So there could be different debt pay down strategies that you choose. And you're also going to have to get real with yourself and understand that you will have to maybe sacrifice something. So I go back to having the budget and having a lot of things on your wants that you don't need it so much. So maybe instead of eating out 3 or 4 times in the month, maybe you only eat out twice now. And then those other 2 times, that money is reallocated to paying down your debt. And that is one way to get started on your debt pay down journey. I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed because they have so much debt. I just want you to lay it all out, pick your best debt pay down strategy that works for you, and then just have a plan and start paying it off. Don't waver. The holidays are coming up. You may spend a little bit more in December, but go back to that budget. Can I really afford to do all of these gifts for every single person? Perhaps not, because you're trying to pay down debt. So maybe you do Secret Santa. Everyone exchange one gift instead of you having to do four gifts, right? Maybe you track the sale. So that pay down should be your focus, even with the holidays coming up, will be my message. And get started, because the bank is not going to give you a break on the interest and say, no interest in December. No, they're waiting for you to have that credit card right now over the next couple of months. So
that's exactly right. I mean, when you were talking about back in college, because my background, my undergraduate degree was in business administration with a concentration in marketing. And you were talking about them coming to the colleges. They are doing these marketing campaigns to college students with credit cards intentionally and by design. As they know, you're 18, 19-year-old in college. Maybe you're out on your own for the first time. You're going to go out there and, what fun it is to just present that card and get what you want. It's not as if, because it's a little bit different having to pull cash out of your pocket or your purse. It's a different experience than it is with the card. So they know that, and they do all kinds of campaigns. Oh, get your first card, so forth and so on. So you do really have to be careful when using it. And a lot of people, especially around in those college years, get in trouble with credit cards. Because like you said, and there was another thing you said, again, about an emergency. But talk a little bit about the usefulness or the benefit of having, not only do you have your regular savings account, because I know people will say, well, how much money do you want me to save? Trust me when I tell you, you have one account for savings, but then you have what she just said, an emergency account.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about the benefits of doing that.
So having an emergency account, the first thing that it's going to do for you is increase your mental health, because you know if something happens, and if you don't think something will happen to you, I'm sorry, something happens to all of us. So you will encounter an emergency. That car tire will go flat eventually, right? Or it will get smooth. You'll have to do that. Something else can happen. You might have to go to the ER, and even though you have insurance, you still have a balance that you have to pay. So those are examples of emergencies. Everyone's emergency will look different for them, but the one thing I can guarantee you is that something unpredictable will happen. So emergency funds are for unpredictable events that happens in a person's life. And having an emergency fund, you are planning for the future, so that when that emergency happens, you don't have to run to your credit card. You have a cash reserve set aside, designed for emergencies. And also think about a lot of layoffs have happened over this year, last year, unfortunately. And what happens when you don't have the amount of income that you normally have coming in? Yes, you could collect unemployment, but that may not be enough for all of your bills. So you need to have that cash reserve set aside for those things. And if you haven't guessed where I'm going with this, you can start planning for your emergency fund using your budget. So you have your budget, and let's say that you can afford $100 every month to put it aside. You do that for 12 months, you're going to have at least $1,000 saved. And so I would say for your emergency fund, the goal is to have, I have a whole process, but my first advice would be get that $1,000 and then work towards your first month, second month, third month. And when you have to spend the money for the emergency fund, don't feel bad about it. That's what it's used, but that's what it's there for. And you just replenish it. The other thing that is very important about having that cash reserve emergency fund set aside is it should be separate from your daily spending account. So I'll say that again. Your emergency fund account should be separate from your daily spending account. So if you have the card that you utilize to buy your groceries, gas, water, going out, you have that card. The emergency account should be separate. You shouldn't be walking around with that card because you might be intended to spend it, and your thought could be, I'm going to put it back if I spend it on this outfit. Usually you forget about it, and then you don't have enough saved. So look at your budget to determine how much money can I save for emergencies, determine what is the amount of money that I am working towards for my emergency reserve, and then save that money in a separate account so that you don't touch it unless there is an emergency that actually occurs. And everyone has emergencies, so everyone should have an emergency reserve.
And see, that's exactly where I was going with the question, because that ought to be a separate account. And you were talking about on the budget. So even in your spreadsheet, in your Excel, there should be an entry that says emergency fund or emergency account. And if you take out $100 from whatever you're getting for that, and it should be in your budget. Like I'm taking out $100 from my emergency account. And like she said, it's a separate account, because the temptation will be, okay, well, you know what? I got this emergency account, so I want to buy this dress, or I want to buy this suit, or I want to buy this iPhone or whatever. And like she said, the thinking is, I'll put it back. But guess what happens? You don't put it back.
Nope. Forget about it.
That's right. You forget about it. And as Shonique just said, trust me when I tell you, the emergencies will come up. The unexpected plans that you might have to take a flight or get plane tickets, whatever, will come up. So by all means. So now we're talking finances here. We talked about, starting young, but is it ever too late?
It is never too late to start changing your financial patterns and your personal finances. It's never too late because you're alive and you're spending money. And so at any time, be ready and willing to change your life. So no.
So, all right, good. So there's hope for me. Now, I'm not that in bad off situation, but I ain't in the greatest situation either. But so that's good to know that there is always hope, because again, this is a very, and you know, in my school, we have begun to be more intentional about making sure my students understand finance, because again, historically, as Black people, at one point, we didn't even believe in credit cards, because for one, we couldn't get one. We couldn't, as an African American or as a Black person, you would not be able to get. So we really did build up pay. I'm like my parents and my grandparents. They call what they call paying on time. They had layaway. If they didn't have it for, like you said earlier, when you were a child, they would save it. If they knew what they wanted to get over a certain period of time, they would just save it. I remember as a kid, stores had layaway that you can go in there and say, okay, I want to purchase this, set this aside for me, and I'll pay on it for the next 6 months. And after that 6 months is up, you got your product, you got your purchase. So in the African American community, in the Black community, there was a time where we just didn't even, I mean, depending on how the person you talk to and how old they are, they just don't even believe in credit cards. Like, if I can't pay for it in cash, I'm not buying it. And it's almost like we got to get it, because I know, like, my pastor, he is like really has a bugaboo, and I don't blame him, because I understand where he's coming from, about those of us who are going to the check cashing place rather than setting up a bank account. Because again, going back to financial literacy, depending on your background and you know, your knowledge, there are a lot of people who are still using a check cashing place, not realizing that they're taking a good percentage of your money just to cash your check.
Yeah, it's a definitely lack of knowledge. Also, people might not believe in banks for whatever reason. They don't know that they can save their money in the bank. And there's something called FDIC, where it's federally insured that up to $100,000, the bank will guarantee that this amount will be safe for your money and for you, and you won't have to incur a fee to cash your check. You will be able to save your money there. You don't have to save it at home. God forbid something happens and, you know, someone breaks into your home, or somehow there's like a home fire, and then all the money that you've been stacking away in the shoebox, it burns, and then you don't have it, right? So the bank is there to help you, to assist you in just having a safe place to store your money in America. So don't be scared. Use the banks. It's insured. You're insured, which means you're guaranteed that you will get that up to that amount of money will be saved, $100,000. And many of us don't have that amount yet. So your $100, $1,000, $20,000, it is safe being in the bank up to $100,000.
Now, you said you were a CPA. How much did your interest in how much did that influence your career choice? Because clearly you started saving as a child, and now you ultimately became a CPA.
So it was moderately unrelated. It wasn't one wasn't influencing the other. For transparency, in Barbados, hospitality is an island, so hospitality is one of the most important ways that you make your money. So I wanted to be a chef, and coming to America, I realized there were other opportunities that I could have, and I realized that I was good at accounting. So I researched it, which many college people might not do, but because I was an older college student, I had a more mature mindset. And so I researched, okay, what is the outlook for auditors and accountants? I saw that there was going to be a 16% increase in demand. So if you do BLS.gov, you can research different careers and see what is going to be the demand. And because I was also good at accounting, I also understood within, 5 years, you could hit your first 6 figures with the projection. It doesn't always happen, but because I saw that I had good potential of earning money, my job was going to be in demand, and I was good at accounting. And then I met a lot of other accountants going to different networking events and accounting clubs and speaking to my professors. That's how I landed into becoming a CPA, because I learned that having my degree was not going to be sufficient, that having the CPA would be one way that I differentiate myself among my peers and competitors when we're all interviewing for the same job. So it wasn't directly related, but I'm glad that I chose the profession because I was good at it.
So again, finance covers taxes and everything else. I noticed that you have an LLC. Talk a little bit about the difference between an LLC versus incorporation.
So the main difference with it would be how you are taxed. At the corporate level, you are taxed differently versus the LLC would like flow into your income. And then depending on the size of your business will also depend on the type of tax structure that you want to have. So there will be different advantages and of each business depending on the type of business that you want, how big your business will be. But my advice would be to anyone who is looking to start, an LLC or to have a corporation, find your CPA and ask them, okay, do you do taxes? Because there are so many different professions that you could have with your CPA. And I work on audit, so my profession is not too focused on taxes. I have a general understanding from doing the exam and other things, but you have to find like a tax CPA for all of your like tax needs, not just an auditor or someone else who isn't really specializing in the field of personal or corporate taxes.
And as we move closer to the end of our hour, I'm going to talk about the question I asked prior to us going on air in terms of now you writing a book, because now you went from practitioner to like author to share and help other people. And the question I asked you earlier was like, okay, when this whole thing as a child, when you started saving and then you ultimately moved to the United States, did you consider yourself or was it in your mind to become an author?
So it was not in my mind. Many things in my life have stemmed from me learning about things as life goes on and then trying to understand, could this be something that I want to do? And so I didn't always want to be an author, but my really good friend, Joy Osahan, she wrote a book, Finding Your Purpose, really good book. She wrote her book and I was very inspired because I never knew anyone who wrote a book before. And so, of course, I supported, I got her book. And then we just started talking. We networked within our different circles. And so she was actually helping some of my friends that met me through her write a book. And so I'm seeing a lot of authors in my circle. And I'm trying to understand, like, hey, how hard is it to write a book? And so I started to learn more about the process. Joy did not hold back anything. She gave me her contact. She gave me her process. And so I had the equipment or the sets to write a book, but I didn't know what I would write about. And so I didn't want to just write about something that was fiction or write a book about myself. I wanted to write something that would help someone besides myself. And I realized going back to doing those budgets for my friends that a lot more people might have the same questions. And so I wanted to help on a wider scale. And so I wanted to also find what are other things that people should know. And because money is not going anywhere, resources to get something that you need is not going anywhere, and it really impacts your life, whether you want to talk about it or not, it impacts your life. So I wanted to have something that I could leave to help other people right now. And as I think about what do I want 100 years from now when I leave this earth, I want to have some type of legacy, and the principles of budgeting, of having an emergency fund, these things are not going away. And I want to leave something for my bloodline and my legacy to help as the years go on and on and on. So that's where my book stems from. It just wasn't, I just want to write a book randomly. No, I wanted to write a book that would be very helpful to other people. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend who wanted to also help me as well and made the process seamless. It is a long process to write a book, but she made it so seamless because I could just call her and say, I don't know what I'm doing. and she would be right there to hold my hand. So that was where the book stemmed from.
Did you self-publish or did you go through a publishing house?
I self-published.
How did you find that process? I know you touched on it a couple of minutes ago. It's like, oh my God, for those in the listening audience who may have been in the same place you were in terms of they feel like they might have a book in their heart or on their mind, or what advice would you give to them?
I would say that, first of all, if you want to do it, do it. No one can hold you back from doing something that you want to do besides yourself and your fear of thinking that your book won't be good enough or you just don't have enough knowledge. And then Google, I use the Fiverr network where you can find different people with different skills to help you along, just to edit your book once you write it, to design it. And then as far as publishing goes, I used through Amazon, they have book publishing services. So I was able to follow the steps. It was very easy to go through them to actually publish the book. So as an author, you would also be able to get the author copies, which is where you have those back copies. I'm sorry, those paperback copies or whatever format your book is. And they would send them to you for a lesser cost than what you're going to be selling them on. But you could also sell through Amazon. So currently I sell through Amazon because it's a seamless process. They have all of the information. So you just go on, you Google the book, you have someone purchase it, and then you get a portion of the sale comes to you, and a portion of the sale also goes to Amazon. But it's really like once you implement it, you don't have to think much about going back and doing anything with the publishing. But I have met people who have self-published, and they've also had to create their barcode, right, the IBSN number, and that is a different process where it would take a little bit more time. It might cost a little bit more, but I decided to go through Amazon, but it's still like self-publishing.
So is it available in e-format?
Yes.
It's e-format as well?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, good. All right. So before the day is out, I will definitely have it in my Kindle. Most of my books are now in my Kindle. When they first came out, it's on my iPad on the Kindle. I didn't think I would like it, but because I read so many books, it allowed me the opportunity that no matter where I go, I always have a book with me. And I used to do it prior to that. And matter of fact, I told people I would always have a bag of books with me. So now I just take my iPad and I got that bag of books in it. So before the day is out, I will have downloaded your book. Talk a little bit about, which is going to lead us in what I usually do in the last 5 minutes or so as I give you the opportunity to promote, but this will lead us into that part. Talk to me a little bit about what is Flourish with Bibby all about?
Flourish with Bibby is about enhancing people's personal finance life. It is a selfless website where I want you to tap in with me and get the book so that you can start changing your generation today and future generations. I'm also going to be coming out with a newsletter as well. So Flourish with Bibby is just the one place where you can go to get the book. You can get the link to my social media as well. It's a way to contact me if you want me to come and do workshops with you. But the premise of the website, which was created this year, was to have a spot where someone can get everything that they need from me, from as far as book, as far as connecting to enhance their personal finance life.
Okay, so as I said, what I do for the last few minutes between now and 8 o'clock is like 6 minutes left, so we can take all of that or short of that, whatever. But I give the guest an opportunity to promote. And with the exception of the dollar amount, you can say anything else. You can shout people out. You can, again, you just told us a little bit about Flourish with Bibby. You could, again, go back, review the book, any book signings, any upcoming projects, your service, anything except the cost.
Okay.
Anything short of that, the mic is yours.
Sure. Thank you. So right now, I would say if you are still trying to decide, do I want this book that will change my life and my generation's life? Tap in with me at Flourish with Bibby on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube. I'm also on Facebook. If you're listening and you are like Mark, you have you work with the youth, or you work with college, or for yourself or for your community, and you want to book a consultation where I come out and I do a workshop with you, contact me at Flourish with Bibby, because I have done community events in the past where I go and I teach from anywhere from 7 to adulthood. And so I'm really focused on those who are 16, 17 and older right now in my journey. So if you want me to come and do that workshop with you in 2025, hit me up, let me know. Also, I will be throwing in an event in the future. So follow my page. We're going to do candle making and also learn about personal finance in January, because after the holiday sale, after the holidays, you may want to get back on track with your finances, and I'll be here. I'll be available for you. So make sure you follow me on Instagram. You'll learn much more when I push out the flyer for that. Also, if you just have general questions, I'm a person just like you. DM me, instant message me, email me. I answer those questions. If you just say, Shani, I just don't know where to start, can we just have a quick call? I also do those quick 30-minute consultations to get you started and tailor your budget for you, tailor your emergency fund for you. I teach about credit and understanding. We all have credit cards. I learned that many people don't even know, what are the different ways that make up my credit score. So I can sit and I talk with you. I talk about paying down debt. If you were like me and you were debt ridden, I talk about different debt pay down strategies, and I create a debt pay down strategy for you to get you started. So those are some of the ways that I can help you to just, advance more and basically improve the feel of your life. Because when you have stable finances and you're not worried about paycheck to paycheck, your life just becomes so much more easier for whatever reason. And that load is just taken off of you. So tap in with me, flourishwithbaby.com. Also, the book is called Money, Financial Literacy and You, available on Amazon, available on my website. If you use the code FALL on the website, there will be a discount applied at checkout. So just tap in with me. I'm here to help and assist. And again, my name is Shonique Bibby, and you can find me Flourish with Baby on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Mark, I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you joining. Matter of fact, a listener texts me a question. It says, seniors preparing to retire, what should they be looking to do, especially if they haven't been able to save very much?
So seniors are looking to retire. The first step would be to understand what is the lifestyle that you want for yourself. Are you going to be living with yourself? Are you going to live with family? What is that? And then start immediately saving. You probably have some type of income coming in. Start saving in one of those higher yielding accounts immediately. If you have any credit card, make your focus to pay off your credit card over the next 2 to 3 years, because you don't want to have the additional debt on you as well. And then you can still open an investment retirement account, an IRA, and they give you a catch-up if you're over a certain age. Normally, every year, the amount that you can deposit into your IRA will change. But when you're over, I think it is 59 and a half or around that age, it lets you catch up and pay an additional amount. And an IRA is just a saving account for when you get older, and you have to sometimes invest those into different stocks, or you can see if you can find one where you tell them that you want them to self-manage, which costs a little bit more. But I would say pay down the debt immediately. If you are about to retire, you don't want to have the debt. You want to start saving in a high yield account, something that's offering you at least 4%. They're out there right now. And then open the IRA today. So that would be my advice for the seniors.
All right. Now, wait, say your last name again.
Bibby. Bibby. B as in boy.
Right. You said Bibby.
Yes.
Okay. I thought I was saying it right. When I heard you say it, I thought maybe I was mispronouncing it. I was like, I thought it said Bibby. But I do know a lot of times whenever either from the Caribbean or from France or whatever, sometimes the pronunciation is different. So that's why I was asking you, is it just like it's spelled? So, okay. Shonique Bibby, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Wonderful topic. I don't think we could talk finances enough or start earlier. Like I said, I'm going to download your book, and I'm sure I'll be using it as I work with my students at my school to start dropping seeds for them to start understanding why rather than spending, and I don't have nothing against Jordans, but rather than spending $150 or $200 or $400 on Jordans, maybe you can get a lesser known.
Yes. No, definitely is important. Let me know as well if you wanted me to come in ever and like maybe speak to a class or two. We can talk more about it.
All right. Yeah, we're right. We're 10 minutes from each other. You're a couple towns over. So by all means. But again, thank you so much. Whenever I get it up on YouTube and getting the MP3 links, I will get them over to you. And when I do, you can do whatever you want with them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you again so much for having me. You've been a great host. You gave me some good questions. I hope that the audience found some value as well. And thank you again for your time and for listening.
Thank you so much. Her website is flourishwithbibby.com. FLOURISH with WITH, Bibby, BIBBY, all together, no spaces. Flourishwithbibby.com. I thank you, and I'll be in touch with you.
Okay, speak soon. Bye.
Take care.